Hello my friend, in this video I am going to review the Kospet Tank X1 rugged smartwatch and fitness tracker. Now it has 70 built-in sport modes, and Kospet says that the X1 has earned up to 15 military standard 810H certifications. And it is actually 10 ATM and IP69K waterproof. But is it accurate? And is it really indestructible like a tank? Let's find out. In this video, we are going to freeze it, we are going to drop it, we are going to smash it, and we are going to drill it. I am going to show you everything you need to know about the Tank X1. What comes in the box, a rundown of all the specs, and tons of in-depth performance and durability tests so you can decide if this is the right watch for you. Now let's get straight into this video. Unboxing. Huge thank you to Kospet for sending me this to review. Now the X1 is priced at $80 on AliExpress at the time of this video, and you can click the link in the description below to check it out or to purchase one. Now the first thing I noticed here is how incredibly strong the X1 feels. The body is made from zinc alloy metal, and it's got two buttons. It's got a power key on one side and a sports key on the other side to pull up all the sports modes. Now these keys are actually made of aerospace aluminum, and they're very durable. The band is made from liquid silicone rubber, and it's very soft and comfortable to wear. The X1 has got a 1.47-inch TFT AMOLED display running at 198 by 368 resolution, made with 3D curved Corning Gorilla Glass 3. And the whole watch weighs 52 grams. It also comes with a very nice magnetic charger, and it takes a couple hours to charge it from zero. It's got a 230 mAh pure cobalt battery that gives you 2 weeks of regular daily use and up to 50 days in standby mode on a single charge. Now let's test out some of the features. Brightness. Kospet claims that the X1 displays everything clearly even in bright sunlight, so let's take it outside and find out. The TFT AMOLED display is super bright, and it is definitely bright enough to see it outside even in broad daylight. So this is a pass. Heart rate resting. Now for this test, I used a blood pressure heart rate monitor, a Fitbit Inspire 3, and the Tank X1. Now I was up walking around, setting up the camera, setting up lights, etc. So it's not exactly resting heart rate, but it's pretty close, and you can see that they all three are pretty close in measurement. We've got 89, 89, and 93 beats per minute. So this is a pass for the Tank X1. These resting heart rate measurements do seem accurate. Blood pressure. Now for the blood pressure test, I was sitting down. The blood pressure monitor reads 113/72, and the Tank X1 reads 117/77. I'd say that's another pass for the X1. Blood pressure seems accurate. Walking, distance, and step counter. For this, I am going to compare the Tank X1 with the Fitbit Inspire 3 as well as Google Maps. Now the X1 does not have a built-in GPS, so you have to take your phone with you if you want to get the map data. Now the first walk went from here to here, but for some reason the Tank X1 stopped recording the distance at 0.21 miles. So I started a second walk from here to here. The heart rate on the X1 was usually pretty close to the Fitbit while walking. Although the heart rate on the X1 did seem to fluctuate by a large amount sometimes. And sometimes it was clearly way off. You can see the Fitbit registers 101 BPM while the Tank X1 registers 55 BPM. but most of the time they were either the same or the Tank X1 was within 10 to 15 beats per minute of the Fitbit. Now I'm gonna hold off on giving a pass-fail here until we see the average heart rate here in a bit. What about distance? Google Maps says we walked 1.38 miles or 2.23 kilometers. Fitbit says we walked 1.32 miles or 2.12 kilometers. And the Kospet Tank X1 says that we walked 1.43 miles or 2.3 kilometers. Now, assuming that Google Maps distance is correct, it looks like the Fitbit underestimated the distance by 0.06 miles or 0.11 kilometers. And the Tank X1 overestimated the distance by 0.05 miles or 0.07 kilometers. So how do we grade this? Well, 8% is generally the cutoff for allowable margin of error in statistics, so any difference under 8% will be a pass, and any difference over 8% will be a fail. So this is only a 3.62% difference in mileage for the Tank X1, so it gets a pass. What about steps? The Fitbit says we took 2,715 steps. The Kospet Tank X1 says we took 3,076 steps. So there's a difference of 361 steps. Now, if we take the distance from Google Maps of 1.38 miles or 2.23 kilometers and we run it through the walking step calculator, we get 2,800 steps. So the Fitbit underestimated this by 85 steps, and the Kospet Tank X1 overestimated it by 276 steps. So that is a difference of 9.85%, and that's going to be a fail here for the Tank X1 on the steps. What about calories? The Kospet Tank X1 says that we burned 123.9 calories. Now, the average calories burned per step is 0.04, and the Tank X1 says we took 3,076 steps times 0.04 equals 123.04 calories. So if that is accurate, that means Kospet is only off by 0.06 calories. So that is a 0.048 difference here, and that is definitely a pass. Average heart rate. The Fitbit said we had an average heart rate of 101 beats per minute, and the Kospet Tank X1 says we had an average heart rate of 101 beats per minute. So that's exactly the same, and that is a pass. Now, it's interesting that even though the Tank X1 had some heart rate readings that looked way off during the walk, the average heart rate ended up the same as the Fitbit Inspire 3. So for walking distance, steps, calories, and walking heart rate, the Tank did very well. On the walking test, the Tank X1 passes in distance, calories, and average heart rate. But it does fail in step counting. Cycling test, heart rate, and distance. For this test, I put on the Fitbit Inspire 3 and the Kospet Tank X1, and then I rode my bike from here to here. Then I did a bunch of laps around here, and then went from here to here, and finally back to here. Here is where I ran into some problems with the heart rate monitor on the Tank X1. The Tank X1 says that I burned 346 calories in 1 hour 10 minutes with an average heart rate of 87, minimum heart rate of 55, and max heart rate of 156. But let's look at the chart in the Tank X1 app. Right here, just after 14 minutes, you can see the heart rate plummets from about 145 to about 60. And then it stays low like this for the rest of the ride. It gets up to 100 and 115-ish a couple of times, but most of the time it's in the 50 to 100 BPM range. Now, if we look at the Fitbit, it shows 148 BPM at 1435, but it does not plummet after that. It actually keeps going up to 156 BPM at 1721, then it drops a little to 136, but then it goes up again to 156, down to 120, then back up again, and it stays above 130 until the end of the ride. Here at 5844 is when I exited this mile loop, which is why the heart rate drops. And then back here at 857, this is where I entered the loop. Now I go a lot faster during the laps on this mile loop, so that is why the heart rate spikes when I enter the loop and it drops again when I exit the loop. So a few minutes after I started doing laps and my heart rate stays above 130, the Tank X1's heart rate recordings drop, and they do not ever really seem to recover. But what about average heart rate? Because during the walking test, some of the readings fluctuated during the walk, but then when we looked at the average heart rate later, it did match up with the Fitbit. But that is not so this time. This time the readings on the app are still way off. And I did try this a second time, but still got the same results. So what is going on here? Now, Lawrence Willen actually mentioned that they had a similar problem with the Kospet Tank M1. They compared the Tank M1 with the Polar H10 and they found that, quote, on a lot of entry-level watches, the measurements are reliable when the heart is at rest and the heart rate doesn't fluctuate too much. As soon as the heart rate increases, the watch can no longer capture the pulses quickly enough. They go on to say that, quote, this is not a problem unique to Kospet, it is almost always the case on watches in this price range. Now the Tank X1 uses the VP60 sensor, which I believe is different than the Tank M1 sensor, but it seems like it has the same problem. The heart rate seems accurate at low levels, but once you get over 120, 130 BPM, it is very inaccurate. For the cycling test, the X1 fails heart rate and distance. Smart recognition. 6 sports are recognized automatically: running, elliptical, cycling, rowing, walking, and standing still. I'm not exactly sure why standing still is included, but maybe it's because standing burns more calories than sitting. Now, I never saw it auto-recognize standing, but I can confirm that it did automatically recognize walking and cycling, so that is a pass. Let's talk about the app. Now, Kospet has designed their own app that goes along with the Tank X1, and it works very well. It keeps track of all of your data over time, and the only thing that I wish that it added was the ability to keep track of what you eat so you can count calories. Daily exercise. The X1 also helps you keep track of your daily exercise on the watch itself and also in the app. Sport modes. The Tank X1 has got over 70 different sport modes, which is probably overkill for most people. It's got all the regular things like running, swimming, baseball, weightlifting, and it's also got some more obscure ones like horse riding, taekwondo, and archery. Now, I will say I have no idea how accurate most of these are, but if you are looking for a fitness tracker for your pickleball matches or shooting, then this might be for you. Other features: sleep tracking, Find My Phone, and music control all worked great. And there are tons of unique watch faces that you can download from the app. You can use the remote camera function to take a photo on your phone by pressing a button on the X1, and this worked, but I couldn't figure out where the photos are stored on the phone. I also couldn't get the phone calls or text messages to show up from the phone onto the X1, but maybe you will have better luck. Durability. Now, Kospet says the X1 has earned, quote, up to 15 military standard 810H certifications, so let's test some of these out. Freeze it in ice. Kospet says the X1 can withstand low temperatures, so let's put it to the test. Let's set the stopwatch. Note that the time here is 12:52 p.m. And now let's put it in a container, fill it with water, and put the whole thing in the freezer for 2 hours. Now the freezer temperature here is 0 degrees Fahrenheit or -18 degrees Celsius. Now after 2 hours, let's take it out. Unfortunately, the watch face turned off, so you can't see the stopwatch running anymore. You can see that it's frozen here in a solid block of ice. Now there is still some unfrozen water in there, but I wasn't sure how long it could last in the freezer, and I didn't want to break it on the first durability test, so I only kept it in the freezer for 2 hours. Now let's bust this thing open with a hammer. It is still working just fine, but you can't see it on the camera because the display is fogged up from the freezer, so let's take it inside so you can see it. After turning the display back on, you can see the stopwatch is still running. We put it in at 12:52 p.m. and you can see here the time is now 3:06 p.m. So it was in the freezer a little over 2 hours. Now I'm not quite sure why the stopwatch reads 34 minutes, but it is still running. Let's try resetting it. You can see the watch still works. I'll turn the brightness down so you can see it a little bit better here. The watch itself is very cold to the touch, but it still works just fine. And no water leaked into the display whatsoever, and freezing didn't seem to affect it at all. So that is a giant pass for sure. Drop on wood, 810G. Kospet says the X1 has passed the 810H drop test, but they don't give a height that it is drop proof from. So how high can you drop it? Now the problem is that the military standard 810H test is extremely complicated, and the 810H drop proofing test could actually be anything from 4 feet to 82 feet. So first, let's take it down a notch and start with the 810G test, which is dropping it onto 2-inch plywood backed by concrete. And to make things simple, I'm going to drop the X1 from 3 heights. 3 feet, which is 1 foot lower than the logistic transit drop, 5 feet, which is the tactical transport drop, and 7 feet, which is the lowest severe tactical transport drop according to 810G. 3-foot drop onto wood. You can see this is about waist high, and it is totally fine. 5-foot drop onto wood. Now this is higher than your wrist for most people, so it's higher than it would probably usually fall. And again, the X1 is unfazed. 7-foot drop onto wood. So this is massive overkill. This is way higher than it would probably ever drop in real life. And the X1 is perfectly fine after a 7-foot drop onto wood. Drop onto concrete, 810H. Now the 810H test is tougher than the 810G test, and it states that items must be dropped onto a steel plate backed by concrete. But realistically, most people are only going to drop it onto things like carpet, wood, or concrete at the most, and not steel. So let's start by dropping it onto concrete. This time we will drop it from 4 feet, 5 feet, and then 7 feet. 4-foot drop onto concrete. Again, this is a little more than wrist high, and it's probably the highest that you would actually drop it from in your daily life. And the X1 is perfectly fine. 5-foot drop onto concrete. Again, this is probably higher than you would ever drop it in your daily life. And the X1 passes this as well. But to be fair, let's drop it a few more times to make sure that it is landing on the watch face. Now it definitely landed on the face on at least one of these drops, and other than triggering a sport mode, the X1 is just fine. 7-foot drop onto concrete. This is an absurdly high drop that would probably never happen in real life, but it is part of the 810H test, so here we go. It triggered a blood oxygen test, it looks like, but the watch still looks perfectly fine. There's no cracks and no scuffs. Now let's drop it again. Perfectly fine, no cracks. And another drop. The third time's the charm here. The X1 did not survive a third drop from 7 feet onto concrete. Yeah, you can see that screen is thoroughly cracked now. Drill test. To be fair, Kospet does not say that the Tank X1 passed a drill test, but they do show the Tank M2 passing the drill test, so let's give it a shot. And I've always wondered here, how hard are they pressing down when they do that drill test? Now granted, this screen is already cracked, but let's try it anyway. Now I am pressing down just a tiny bit, and the screen is still holding up. And it does not seem to be scratching it at all either. But when I apply more pressure, the drill does penetrate the display. And with more pressure, boom, there goes the display. Now I will admit I am pressing down very hard right now. I'm basically trying to break this thing. It still hasn't quite penetrated completely through to the back of the watch. Let's see if we can put a hole straight through it. And let's see if it will blow up when we penetrate the battery. Well, there is a hole, but the battery didn't blow up. There is a tiny bit of smoke coming out though. Now let's try drilling through the strap. This strap is made from silicone rubber and it is very, very strong. I'm actually having trouble drilling through it, to be honest. Let's change drill bits. And I was finally able to bore a hole in the strap. Again, these straps are very strong. Now let's try drilling into the watch with this drill bit. Whoa, there goes the 230 milliampere hour pure cobalt battery. Now don't think that this is going to happen to you if you wear the X1. Obviously, the only reason it did this is because I drilled a hole through it. Hammer test. I have removed one of the straps to make this easier. Now let's see how the zinc alloy metal body does with the hammer test. The backing is starting to come off, but that metal body is holding up very nicely. The back has come off completely, but I am very impressed with the strength of the body on the X1. I mean, I am banging the absolute crap out of this thing. I am literally trying to break it. And while it is bending, it will not break. I wonder if I'll be able to break this off at all. And there goes the left side, finally. That took a serious beating. Now, I am also very impressed at how durable these side buttons are. I was finally able to get the button off of this side here, but as you can see, the right side of the frame never did actually break. Conclusion, pros and cons. I am actually pretty impressed with the X1 overall. Pros. It's got a super bright display and you can definitely see it outside in daylight. Resting heart rate is accurate. Walking heart rate average is accurate. Blood pressure is accurate. Walking distance is accurate. And walking calories burned is also accurate. Smart recognition worked with walking and cycling, and the app is nice. Sleep tracking works nicely. Weather, Find My Phone, and music control are pretty cool. And as you have seen, it is very durable. Cons. It's actually a little heavy on the wrist, but if you are used to wearing a more durable watch, you will probably be fine with it. There is no inbuilt GPS. The step counter was questionable. Real-time walking heart rate is questionable. Cycling heart rate and distance is very inaccurate. And I couldn't get phone calls or text messages to come through on the X1. Now my main problem with the X1 is that the heart rate and calorie burn tracking seem very inaccurate when you get into higher intensity workouts and higher heart rates. Now, even though the display did crack, remember that it was from 7 feet, or over 2 meters, and that is very, very high. Most drops are probably going to be from 4 to 6 feet, and the X1 display is made from Gorilla Glass 3. Now, I could not find a drop height for Gorilla Glass 3, but Gorilla Glass Victus, which is 5 generations newer than Gorilla Glass 3, offers drop protection from 2 meters or 6.5 feet onto concrete. So in my test, we saw that the Gorilla Glass 3 screen on the X1 survived multiple drops from 5 feet onto concrete, and even 2 drops from 7 feet onto concrete. But that third 7-foot drop was too much for the Gorilla Glass 3. Well, what do you think about the Kospet Tank X1? Let me know in the comments below. Please share this video if you have found it helpful, and then click here for another great rugged tech video, and I will see you there.